The woman stumbled into Santa Rosa, New Mexico at high noon on the hottest day of August 1882. Her dark hair matted with dust, and her wrists bearing angry red rope burns that made every person who glimpsed them look away in discomfort. Damon Young had been loading supplies onto his wagon outside the general store when he saw her collapse against the wooden post near the saloon. He dropped the sack of grain he was carrying and ran across the dirt street, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each stride. When he reached her, she flinched so violently that she nearly fell, her green eyes wild with fear. "Easy now," Damon said softly, holding his hands up where she could see them. "I am not going to hurt you. You need help." She looked at him with those haunted eyes, and he could see her weighing whether to trust him or run. She was young, maybe 20 or 21, with a delicate face that would have been pretty if not for the exhaustion and fear etched into every feature. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and the rope burns on her wrists were raw and bleeding in places. "Please," she whispered, and that single word seemed to take everything she had left. Her knees buckled, and Damon caught her before she hit the ground. He carried her to his ranch house 3 miles outside of town, ignoring the curious stares from the townspeople and the whispers that followed in his wake. His ranch was modest but well kept, a 2-bedroom house with a wide porch and a barn for his horses. He laid her gently on the spare bed and went to fetch water and clean cloths. When he returned, her eyes were open, tracking his every movement with that same mixture of fear and desperate hope. He sat down in the chair beside the bed, keeping a respectful distance. "My name is Damon Young," he said. "This is my ranch. You are safe here. Nobody is going to hurt you." She did not respond, just watched him with those wide green eyes. "I need to clean those wounds on your wrists," he continued. "They look infected. Will you let me do that?" After a long moment, she gave a tiny nod. Damon worked carefully, dipping the cloth in cool water and gently washing away the dried blood and dirt. She hissed in pain when he touched the raw flesh, but she did not pull away. The rope burns were deep, the kind that came from struggling against restraints for hours or maybe even days. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "All right," he said. "You do not have to tell me. But I promise you, whoever they are not getting to you here. You have my word on that." He applied a salve his mother had taught him to make from honey and herbs, then wrapped her wrists in clean bandages. When he was finished, she pulled her hands close to her chest, cradling them like wounded birds. "What is your name?" Damon asked. For a moment he thought she would not answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Violet. Violet Stone." "Well, Miss Stone, you are welcome to stay here as long as you need. There is food in the kitchen and you can rest in this room. I will be sleeping in the main bedroom and I promise I will not bother you. You just focus on healing." Violet's lower lip trembled. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you need help," Damon said simply. "And because it is the right thing to do." That night, Damon lay awake in his bed, listening to the sound of Violet crying in the next room. He wanted to go to her to offer comfort, but he knew his presence would likely frighten her more. So he stayed where he was, staring at the ceiling and wondering what kind of hell she had escaped from. The next morning, he found Violet sitting at the kitchen table, wearing one of his shirts over her torn dress. She looked even smaller in the daylight, her frame too thin and her skin pale beneath the tan. He made breakfast, simple fare of eggs and bread, and set a plate in front of her. "You should eat," he said. "You need your strength." Violet picked at the food, taking small bites as if she were afraid it might be taken away. Damon ate his own breakfast and tried not to stare at her, though he found his gaze drawn to her again and again. There was something about her that pulled at him, something beyond just the obvious fact that she needed protection. "How long was I asleep?" Violet asked suddenly. "Most of yesterday afternoon and all through the night," Damon replied. "It is about 7 in the morning now." She nodded, processing this information. "I should go. I have already imposed on you too much." "Go where?" Damon asked. "You do not have anywhere to go, do you?" Violet's silence was answer enough. "Then stay," Damon said. "At least until you are healed and have a plan. I could use help around here anyway. The house gets messy when it is just me, and I am not much of a cook." It was a lie. Damon kept his house clean and could cook well enough to survive. But he could see the pride in Violet's eyes, the need to feel like she was earning her keep rather than accepting charity. "I do not want to be a burden," Violet said. "You would not be. You would be helping me." Violet studied him for a long moment, those green eyes searching his face for any sign of deception or hidden motives. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. "All right. But just until I figure out what to do next." "That is fine by me." Over the next few days, they fell into an easy routine. Violet kept the house clean and cooked meals while Damon worked with the horses and tended to the ranch. They spoke little at first, both feeling out the boundaries of this strange new arrangement. But gradually, Violet began to relax. The fear started to fade from her eyes, replaced by something softer. Damon found himself looking forward to coming back to the house each evening, to the smell of dinner cooking and the sight of Violet moving around the kitchen. She had a quiet grace about her, a gentleness that he found deeply appealing. And when she smiled, which was not often but becoming more frequent, it lit up her entire face. One evening about a week after Violet had arrived, Damon came in from the barn to find her on the porch, staring out at the sunset. He sat down beside her, keeping a respectful distance as always. "Beautiful, is it not?" he said. "Yes," Violet replied. "I had almost forgotten what it was like to watch a sunset without being afraid." Damon waited, sensing that she was ready to talk. "I was taken from my family's homestead 6 months ago," Violet said quietly. "A gang of outlaws raided our place. They killed my father and brother. They took me with them." Damon felt rage building in his chest, hot and fierce. "Where is your mother?" "She died when I was 14. It was just the 3 of us on the homestead." "I am so sorry," Damon said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. "They kept me tied up most of the time," Violet continued, her voice flat as if she were recounting someone else's story. "They moved from place to place, robbing and killing. I was just something they owned, something to use however they wanted." Damon's hands clenched into fists. "How did you get away?" "We were camped near a town called Las Vegas, about 100 miles from here. One of the men got drunk and did not tie the ropes as tight as he should have. I worked at them for hours until my wrists were bleeding, but I got free. I stole a horse and rode as hard as I could. When the horse gave out, I walked." "Did they follow you?" "I do not know. I think so. I kept hearing things behind me, but I could not tell if it was real or just my fear playing tricks." Damon turned to look at her, at the profile of her face in the fading light. "I meant what I said the first day. You are safe here. If those men come looking for you, they will have to go through me." Violet turned to meet his gaze, and for the first time since she had arrived, he saw something other than fear in her eyes. It was trust, fragile and tentative, but trust nonetheless. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk your life for me? You do not even know me." "Maybe not," Damon said, "but I know enough. I know you are brave. I know you survived something that would have broken most people. And I know that you deserve better than what you got." Tears welled up in Violet's eyes. "I do not feel brave. The bravest people never do." That night, Damon pulled out his father's old rifle and cleaned it thoroughly. He loaded it and kept it by his bed along with his pistol. If those outlaws came for Violet, he would be ready. The next few weeks passed peacefully. Violet's wrists healed, the angry red marks fading to pink scars. She started to gain weight, her face filling out and the color returning to her cheeks. She smiled more often, and sometimes Damon even heard her humming while she worked. They talked more too, sharing stories about their lives. Damon told her about growing up on this ranch, about learning to work with horses from his father and how to make medicine from his mother. Both his parents had died 5 years ago in a fever outbreak, leaving him alone on the ranch at age 23. Violet told him about her childhood in Kansas, about moving to New Mexico with her family when she was 16 in search of better land. She had loved the wide open spaces, the way you could see for miles in every direction. She had been happy there on the homestead with her father and brother. "You miss it?" Damon asked one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner. "I miss them," Violet said, "but the place itself, no. There is too much pain there now. Even if I could go back, I do not think I would want to." "What would you want?" Damon asked. "If you could have anything," Violet was quiet for a long time, considering. "Peace," she finally said. "A place where I feel safe. Where I can sleep through the night without nightmares. Maybe someday, a family again. I know that probably sounds foolish after everything that happened." "It does not sound foolish at all," Damon said. "It sounds perfectly reasonable." He wanted to say more, wanted to tell her that he could give her those things, that he was falling in love with her more each day. But it seemed too soon, too presumptuous. She had been through hell, and the last thing she needed was him pushing his feelings on her. So instead, he just sat beside her in companionable silence, watching the stars come out one by one in the darkening sky. It was a month after Violet's arrival when the outlaws finally caught up with them. Damon had ridden into town to pick up supplies, leaving Violet at the ranch. He was loading the wagon when a stranger approached him outside the general store. The man was rough-looking, with a scar across his left cheek and eyes like chips of flint. "You Damon Young?" he asked. "Who is asking?" Damon replied, his hand moving instinctively toward his gun. "Name is Frank Miller. I am looking for a woman. Young, dark hair, green eyes. Word is she might be staying at your place." Damon's blood ran cold, but he kept his face neutral. "I do not know what you are talking about." "Do not play games with me, boy," Miller said, his voice dangerous. "That woman belongs to our gang. She stole from us when she ran. We want her back." "She does not belong to anyone," Damon said. "And even if I knew where she was, I would not tell you." Miller's hand dropped to his gun. "Maybe you need some convincing. Maybe you need to leave town before I tell the sheriff you are here threatening people," Damon said. He raised his voice slightly, and several men in the street turned to look. "I hear there is a price on the head of Frank Miller. $200, is it not?" "For robbery and murder up in Colorado," Miller's eyes narrowed. He glanced around at the growing crowd of onlookers. "This is not over," he said. "You just painted a target on your back." "Get out of Santa Rosa," Damon said. "Now." Miller spat in the dust and walked away, but Damon knew this was far from finished. He quickly finished loading his supplies and drove the wagon back to the ranch as fast as the horses could manage. Violet was in the kitchen when he burst through the door. She took one look at his face and went pale. "They found me." "One of them was in town," Damon said. "A man named Frank Miller. Do you know him?" "He is the leader," Violet whispered. "He is the worst of them all." Damon went to his bedroom and retrieved both his rifle and pistol. He checked that both were loaded and ready. "How many men in his gang?" "There were 8 when I escaped, but some might have been killed or moved on by now." "Even if it is just 3 or 4, those are not good odds," Damon muttered. He looked at Violet, taking in her frightened expression. "Listen to me. I am not going to let them take you, but I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say." Violet nodded, her hands trembling. "There is a root cellar beneath the kitchen floor," Damon said. "It has a hidden entrance under the rug by the stove. If they come here, I want you to hide down there and not come out until I tell you it is safe. No matter what you hear, you stay hidden. Do you understand?" "I understand. But Damon, I cannot let you fight them alone. They will kill you." "They will not," Damon said with more confidence than he felt. "I know this land better than they do, and I have the advantage of defending rather than attacking. Just promise me you will hide if they come." "I promise." They spent the rest of the day preparing. Damon barricaded the windows and doors, leaving only small gaps to shoot through. He positioned extra ammunition around the house where he could easily reach it. He showed Violet the cellar again and made sure she knew how to lock it from the inside. Night fell and Damon sat by the window with his rifle across his knees. Violet sat nearby, too frightened to sleep. They waited in tense silence, every small noise outside making them both jump. "Tell me something," Violet said softly. "Tell me something good. I need to think about something other than what might be coming." Damon thought for a moment. "When I was 10 years old, my father took me to catch wild horses up in the mountains. We spent 2 weeks camping out there, just the two of us. He taught me how to track them, how to approach them without spooking them, how to gain their trust. I caught my first wild horse on that trip, a beautiful paint mare. I named her Sunshine because her coat looked gold in the morning light." "What happened to her?" Violet asked. "She lived to be 20 years old. She was the best horse I ever had, smart as a whip and loyal as they come. You must miss her." "I do. But I have her daughter in the barn now. She is almost as good as her mother was." They continued talking through the night, sharing memories and stories to keep the fear at bay. Damon told her about his childhood adventures, about learning to rope and ride, about the time he accidentally lassoed the preacher during Sunday service. Violet told him about her mother, about learning to sew and cook, about the garden she had kept at the homestead. As Violet talked, Damon found himself memorizing everything about her. The way her eyes lit up when she smiled, the small dimple in her left cheek, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. He realized with stunning clarity that he loved her, that he would die protecting her if that was what it took. Dawn broke with no sign of the outlaws. Damon allowed himself to hope that maybe Miller had decided it was not worth the trouble, that maybe he had moved on. But then, around mid-morning, he saw the dust on the horizon. Riders, at least 5 of them, heading straight for the ranch. "Violet, get in the cellar. Now." She did not argue. She kissed him quickly on the cheek, her lips soft against his skin, and then she was gone, disappearing beneath the kitchen floor. Damon repositioned the rug and took his place by the window. The riders came to a stop about 50 yards from the house. Miller was in front, and Damon recognized 2 other men from wanted posters he had seen. All of them were heavily armed. "Young," Miller shouted, "send the woman out and we will leave peacefully. No one has to die today." "She is not going anywhere with you," Damon called back. "Ride away now and I will not shoot you," Miller laughed. "You are outnumbered, boy. You might get 1 or 2 of us, but you will not get all of us. And when we get in that house, we are going to make you watch while we take her. Then we are going to kill you slow." Damon's answer was to raise his rifle and fire. The shot caught Miller's hat and sent it flying. The outlaws scattered, diving behind whatever cover they could find. For the next hour, it was a standoff. The outlaws fired at the house, their bullets thudding into the wooden walls. Damon fired back, conserving his ammunition and making each shot count. He managed to wound one of the outlaws, the man crying out and falling behind a water trough. But Damon knew he could not keep this up forever. Eventually, they would rush the house, and he could not fight them all at once. He needed help. As if in answer to his thoughts, he heard horses approaching from the east. He risked a glance and saw riders coming fast. For a moment, his heart sank, thinking it was more outlaws. But then he recognized the man in front as Sheriff Dawson from Santa Rosa. The outlaws recognized the danger at the same moment Damon did. They broke and ran for their horses, firing wildly behind them as they rode. The sheriff's posse gave chase, and the sound of gunfire faded into the distance. Damon slumped against the wall, his legs shaking with reaction. He had never been so scared in his life. "Violet," he called, "it is safe. You can come out." The cellar door opened and Violet emerged, her face tear-stained. She ran to him and he caught her in his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "You are safe," he murmured into her hair. "You are safe now." Sheriff Dawson returned an hour later with good news. They had caught all 5 outlaws, including Frank Miller. 2 were dead, killed in the chase, and the other 3 were in custody. It turned out there were warrants for all of them in 3 different territories. They would hang for their crimes. "You did good, Damon," the sheriff said. "Standing up to them like that took courage." "I did not have much choice," Damon replied. "They were threatening someone under my protection." The sheriff looked at Violet, who was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. "Miss, if you are willing to testify about what they did to you and your family, we can make sure justice is served." Violet met the sheriff's gaze steadily. "I will testify." The trial took place 3 weeks later in Las Vegas, where the outlaws had committed most of their crimes. Damon went with Violet, sitting beside her in the courtroom as she recounted in detail everything that had happened. It was hard to hear, harder than Damon had imagined, but he held her hand through it all, giving her his strength. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts. The judge sentenced the 3 surviving outlaws to death by hanging. On the ride back to Santa Rosa, Violet was quiet. Damon let her process everything in her own time, not pushing her to talk. It was only when they were almost home that she finally spoke. "It is really over," she said, sounding almost disbelieving. "It is really over," Damon confirmed. "I can stop looking over my shoulder. I can stop being afraid. You can live your life however you want to live it." Violet turned to look at him, her green eyes serious. "What if what I want is to stay with you?" Damon's heart skipped a beat. "You would be welcome to stay as long as you want." "You know that." "Not as your housekeeper," Violet said. "As your wife." Damon pulled the wagon to a stop, needing to see her face clearly. "Violet, are you sure? You have been through so much. I do not want you to feel obligated to me just because I helped you." "That is not why," Violet said. She reached up and touched his face, her palm warm against his cheek. "I love you, Damon. I think I started loving you that first day when you bandaged my wrists and promised I would be safe. You gave me back my life. You gave me back my hope. And I want to spend whatever time I have left on this earth with you." Damon covered her hand with his own. "I love you too. I have loved you almost from the beginning, but I was afraid to tell you, afraid of pushing you before you were ready." "I am ready," Violet said. "I am ready to stop surviving and start living. With you." Damon kissed her then, softly at first and then with growing passion. All the fear and tension of the past months melted away, replaced by joy and hope and love. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. "Is that a yes?" Violet asked with a smile. "That is absolutely a yes," Damon replied. They were married a month later in the small church in Santa Rosa. The entire town came out for the wedding, these people who had become their friends and neighbors. Violet wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself. and Damon wore his best suit. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Damon kissed her like he had been waiting his entire life for this moment, because in many ways he had. The first year of their marriage was the happiest either of them had ever known. They worked together on the ranch, building it up into something truly successful. Violet had a gift with animals, Damon discovered, particularly with the horses. She could gentle even the wildest Mustang with patience and kindness. They expanded the house, adding a second story with 2 more bedrooms. "For the children we will have," Violet said with a shy smile. "How many children are we planning on?" Damon teased. "At least 3 or 4. I want a big family, one full of love and laughter." "Then that is what we will have." True to their hopes, Violet found herself expecting a baby late in their first year of marriage. Damon was both thrilled and terrified, worried about all the things that could go wrong. But Violet was healthy and strong, and when their son was born on a cool October evening in 1883, both mother and baby came through it perfectly. They named him Daniel, after Damon's father. He had Violet's green eyes and Damon's dark hair, and from his first day on Earth, he owned both their hearts completely. Life settled into a new rhythm. Damon continued working the ranch while Violet cared for Daniel and managed the household. They hired a young man named Pete to help with the heavier ranch work, which freed up more of Damon's time to spend with his family. When Daniel was 2 years old, Violet gave birth to twin girls. They named them Rose and Ruby, and they were identical except for a small birthmark on Rose's left shoulder. The twins had their mother's delicate features and their father's sturdy build, and they were into everything from the moment they could crawl. The house that had once been so quiet was now filled with the sounds of children playing, laughing, occasionally crying. Damon loved it all. He loved coming in from the fields to find Daniel helping his mother in the garden or the twins trying to catch the barn cats. He loved the bedtime routine of stories and songs, the way all 3 children would pile onto the bed to listen. He loved the quiet moments late at night when the children were asleep, and he could hold Violet in his arms, marveling at how lucky he was. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if you had not been in town that day?" Violet asked him one night as they lay in bed. "I try not to," Damon admitted. "The thought of you still being with those men, or worse, is more than I can bear." "I think about it sometimes," Violet said softly. "Not because I want to, but because it helps me appreciate what we have now. I never take a single day for granted, Damon. Every morning when I wake up beside you, every time I see our children playing, I remember how close I came to losing it all before I ever had it." Damon pulled her closer. "You are safe now. You will always be safe. I know. Because of you." As the years passed, the ranch continued to prosper. Damon became known throughout the territory as one of the best horse breeders in New Mexico. People came from as far away as Texas and Arizona to buy his horses, drawn by their reputation for intelligence and good temperament. Violet started a small business of her own, raising chickens and selling eggs in town. She also made beautiful quilts that sold for good prices to the wealthier families in the area. She was proud of her independence, of contributing to the family's success in her own way. Daniel grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working with his father on the ranch. He had a natural way with the horses, just like his mother, and Damon knew that one day the ranch would pass into good hands. The twins, Rose and Ruby, were different from each other in temperament, despite looking identical. Rose was quiet and bookish, always reading whenever she could. Ruby was wild and adventurous, constantly getting into scrapes and coming home with scraped knees and torn dresses. Violet joked that Ruby had inherited her mother's survival instincts, while Rose had gotten her more contemplative side. When Daniel was 10 and the twins were 8, Violet gave birth to another son. They named him James, and he was the baby of the family, doted on by his older siblings and parents alike. James was a happy, easy-going child who smiled at everyone and everything. Life was not without its challenges. There were droughts that tested their resolve and winters that were harsh enough to lose livestock. There were illnesses and injuries, the normal trials of any family living on the frontier. But through it all, Damon and Violet faced everything together, their love growing stronger with each passing year. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Damon took Violet into Santa Rosa for a rare evening alone. They had dinner at the hotel restaurant, a luxury they seldom allowed themselves. As they sat across from each other in the candlelight, Damon reached across the table and took her hand. 10 years, he said. It has gone by so fast. The happiest 10 years of my life, Violet replied. Sometimes I still cannot believe how much my life has changed. If someone had told me back when I was tied up in that outlaw camp that I would end up here, married to the most wonderful man I have ever known with 4 beautiful children, I would not have believed them. You deserved all of this and more, Damon said. You deserve to be happy. So did you, Violet said. You spent 5 years alone on that ranch working yourself to the bone, and then you took in a broken stranger and gave her a home. You were not broken, Damon said. You were hurt but not broken. There is a difference. Maybe, Violet said. But you healed me anyway, in every way that mattered. They renewed their wedding vows that night in the church, with their children and friends as witnesses. It was a simple ceremony, but it meant more to both of them than the first wedding had. This time, they knew exactly what they were promising each other. They had lived through the good times and the bad, and they were choosing each other all over again. As the children grew older, they began to spread their wings. Daniel, at 18, took over more and more of the ranch operations, allowing Damon to slow down a bit. Rose, at 16, announced her intention to become a teacher. She was already helping the school teacher in Santa Rosa, and everyone agreed she had a gift for it. Ruby, also 16, showed no interest in teaching or ranching. She wanted adventure, wanted to see more of the world than just New Mexico. Damon worried about her wild spirit, but Violet understood. She is like I was, Violet told him, before everything happened. Full of dreams and fearless. The difference is that she has a safe home to come back to. Let her explore while she is young. She will find her way. James, at 8, was still young enough to be content with childhood. He loved helping his father and brother with the horses, and he loved following his mother around the house, learning to cook and sew. He was going to be a kind man, Damon thought, the kind who was comfortable with gentleness as well as strength. In 1895, when they had been married for 13 years, Damon turned 40 years old. Violet threw him a surprise party, inviting everyone from town and all their neighboring ranchers. As he looked around at the gathered crowd, at the friends they had made and the life they had built, he felt overwhelming gratitude. That night, after everyone had gone home and the children were in bed, Damon and Violet sat on the porch together, just as they had done so many times over the years. "Thank you," Damon said. "For what?" Violet asked. "For everything. For staying all those years ago, for loving me, for giving me this family, this life. I know I do not say it enough, but I am grateful every single day." Violet leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am the one who should be thanking you. You saved my life, Damon, not just from those outlaws, but from a life without love, without hope. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Damon corrected gently. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out. The night was warm, the air filled with the sound of crickets and the distant call of an owl. From inside the house, they could hear James laughing at something Daniel had said. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Violet asked. "When you were bandaging my wrists." "I said a lot of things," Damon replied. "You promised me I would be safe. You said those words like they were a vow, like nothing in the world would stop you from keeping me safe. I meant it. I know you did. I saw it in your eyes even then, and you kept that promise, Damon. Every single day for 13 years you have kept me safe. You have kept all of us safe." Damon kissed the top of her head. "I will keep that promise for the rest of my life." "I know," Violet said. "That is why I love you." As they sat together under the stars, Damon thought about that day in August 1882, when a scared, hurt woman had stumbled into Santa Rosa. He thought about the choice he had made to help her, how easily he might have looked away like everyone else had. And he thought about all the moments that had followed, the ones that had led them to this porch, this life, this love. It had not always been easy. There had been dark moments and hard times, but through it all they had held onto each other, and that had made all the difference. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges. Daniel married a sweet young woman named Sarah from a neighboring ranch, and they had their first child, a daughter, when Daniel was 21. Damon and Violet became grandparents, which filled them both with a joy they had not anticipated. Rose became a teacher just as she had planned, taking over the school in Santa Rosa when the previous teacher retired. She was beloved by her students, known for her patience and creativity. Ruby did travel, much to Damon's initial worry. She went to Denver and then to San Francisco, working odd jobs and sending letters home full of her adventures. But Violet had been right. When Ruby was 22, she came home, ready to settle down. She met a young doctor who had recently moved to Santa Rosa, and they were married within a year. James grew into a thoughtful young man who split his time between helping on the ranch and studying law. He wanted to be a lawyer, to help people the way he had seen his father help his mother all those years ago. Damon was proud of all his children, but there was something special about James, about his gentle heart and his desire to make the world a better place. In 1900, Damon and Violet celebrated their 18th wedding anniversary. They were in their early 40s now, with streaks of gray in their hair and lines on their faces. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the people they had been that first day, the cowboy and the woman with rope burns on her wrists. 18 years, Violet marveled. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we have always been together. "I prefer to think we have always been together," Damon said. "Even before we met, we were moving toward each other. It was just a matter of time until our paths crossed." "That is a romantic notion," Violet said with a smile. "I am a romantic man when it comes to you." They were hosting a family dinner that evening. All 4 children and their families gathered around the expanded dining table. As Damon looked at the assembled crowd, at the grandchildren playing on the floor and the adult children laughing with each other, he felt a profound sense of peace. This was what he had saved Violet for. Not just to save her from the outlaws, but to save her for this life, this family, this joy. And in doing so, he had saved himself from a life of loneliness. After dinner, Daniel pulled Damon aside. "Father, Sarah and I have been talking. We think it is time for you and Mother to take things easier. Let me and Sarah run the ranch. You have earned the right to rest." Damon was about to protest, but then he saw Violet watching them, and he saw the hope in her eyes. She wanted this, he realized. Wanted the freedom to spend their days together without the constant demands of the ranch. "All right," he agreed, "but I am still going to help out when you need me." "I would not expect anything else," Daniel said with a grin. So Damon and Violet entered a new phase of their lives. They still lived on the ranch, in the house they had built together, but the daily operations were now Daniel's responsibility. This gave them time to pursue interests they had always put aside. Violet started a small library in Santa Rosa, donating many of their own books and encouraging others to do the same. She organized reading groups and helped people learn to read if they had never had the chance. Damon began breaking horses again, not for money but for the pure joy of it. He took on the most difficult cases, the horses that everyone said were untrainable, and he worked with them patiently until they became gentle and trusting. They also traveled, something they had never had time for when the children were young. They went to Denver to visit the sites Ruby had written about in her letters. They went to El Paso and San Antonio. They even made the long journey to San Francisco, where they saw the ocean for the first time. But no matter where they went, they always came back to Santa Rosa, to the ranch that had been the setting for their love story. This was home, and it always would be. In 1905, on a warm spring evening very much like the one when they had first met, Damon and Violet sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were both 50 years old now, their bodies bearing the marks of hard work and good living. "You have any regrets?" Violet asked suddenly. "About what?" Damon replied, "About any of it, about taking me in that day, about the life we have lived." Damon turned to look at her, really look at her. Her dark hair was streaked with silver now, and there were lines around her eyes and mouth, but she was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. "Not a single one," he said. "Do you?" "Only that I did not find you sooner," Violet said. "I wasted 20 years of my life without you in it." "Those years made you who you are," Damon said. "They brought you to that moment in Santa Rosa, and that moment brought us here." "I suppose you are right," Violet said. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I just want to make sure you know how much this has all meant to me, how much you mean to me." "I know," Damon said. "I have always known. Good. Because I plan on spending at least another 40 years reminding you." Damon laughed. "I will hold you to that." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. In the distance, they could hear Daniel and Sarah's children playing, their laughter carried on the evening breeze. This was happiness, Damon thought. Not the absence of pain or difficulty, but the presence of love strong enough to weather any storm. He had found that love 23 years ago in a woman with rope burns on her wrists and fear in her eyes. And every day since then, he had chosen to keep finding it, keep nurturing it, keep protecting it. "I love you," he said, the words as true and vital as they had been the first time he had spoken them. "I love you too," Violet replied, "always and forever." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Damon Young held his wife close and gave thanks for every moment that had brought them to this place. For the courage to help a stranger, for the strength to fight for what was right, for the wisdom to recognize love when it appeared. And most of all, for the blessing of spending his life with a woman who had taught him that even the deepest wounds could heal with time and care and love. The ranch continued to thrive under Daniel's management, and as more years passed, it became clear that the Young family had built something lasting. The younger grandchildren grew up hearing stories about their grandmother's arrival in Santa Rosa and their grandfather's promise of safety. It became part of the family lore, a story told and retold until it took on an almost mythical quality. But for Damon and Violet, it was never a myth. It was the foundation of everything they had built together, the moment when both their lives had changed forever. In 1910, when they celebrated their 28th wedding anniversary, all 4 of their children organized a grand celebration. The entire town came out for it. Generations of people whose lives had been touched by Damon and Violet's kindness and generosity. The sheriff, now retired, gave a speech about the day Damon had stood up to the outlaws, protecting not just one woman but the principle that people deserved safety and dignity. The schoolteacher talked about Violet's work with the library and how it had transformed the town. Neighbors and friends shared stories of help given in hard times, of advice and comfort freely offered. Through it all, Damon and Violet sat together, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love. They had never sought recognition or praise. They had simply lived their lives as best they could, trying to do right by each other and by those around them. Did we really do all that? Violet whispered to Damon as yet another person stood to speak. I suppose we must have, Damon replied, though I think they might be exaggerating a bit. Maybe, Violet said, but maybe we just did not realize how much small acts of kindness could mean to people. The evening ended with dancing under strings of lanterns, the warm night air filled with music and laughter. Damon held Violet in his arms as they swayed to a waltz, moving together with the ease of long practice. This is perfect, Violet said, resting her head against his chest. Everything is perfect. It is, Damon agreed. Though I have to admit, I am looking forward to when everyone goes home and it is just us again. Violet laughed. Me too. I love our family and friends, but there is something special about the quiet moments with just the two of us. Those are my favorite moments, Damon said. As if on cue, the song ended, and people began to gather their families to head home. There were hugs and well wishes, promises to visit soon, thanks for a wonderful evening. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the last guest departed. Damon and Violet stood in the yard, surveying the aftermath of the party. There were tables to be put away and dishes to be washed, but all of that could wait until morning. Come on, Damon said, taking Violet's hand. Let us go sit on the porch. They settled into their usual spots, Violet curling up against Damon's side. The night was quiet now, just the sound of crickets and the rustle of wind through the cottonwood trees. 28 years, Violet said softly, and I love you more now than I did when we got married. I was just thinking the same thing, Damon said. I did not think it was possible to love someone more than I loved you then, but every year, every day, every moment my love seems to grow. Do you think it will ever stop growing? Violet asked. Not as long as I am breathing, Damon replied. And probably not even then. Violet tilted her face up to kiss him, a kiss that was sweet and familiar and still held the spark of passion even after all these years. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. Remember when you promised me safety, Violet said, that very first day. I remember, Damon said. You have kept that promise in ways I never imagined. You gave me physical safety, yes, but you also gave me emotional safety, a place where I could heal, where I could learn to trust again, where I could be vulnerable without fear. That is a gift I can never repay. You do not need to repay it, Damon said. You have given me the same thing. Before you came, I was just going through the motions of living. You gave me purpose and joy and love. You gave me a family. You gave me a reason to wake up each morning excited about what the day would bring. They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their memories. The good ones and the hard ones, the moments of joy and the moments of struggle, all of it woven together into the tapestry of their shared life. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if things had been different? Violet asked. If you had not been in town that day, if someone else had helped me? No, Damon said firmly. Because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. I do not want to imagine it. As far as I am concerned, we were always meant to find each other. The universe just made sure we did. I like that way of thinking about it, Violet said. It makes it seem less random and more like destiny." "It was destiny," Damon said. "I am sure of it." As the night wore on, they eventually went inside to bed. They climbed the stairs together, their movements synchronized from years of walking side by side. In their bedroom, they prepared for sleep with the comfortable routine of long habit. When they finally lay down, Violet moved into Damon's arms, fitting against him perfectly. This was her favorite part of every day, these quiet moments in the dark with the man she loved more than life itself. "Good night, my love," she whispered. "Good night, sweetheart," Damon replied, kissing her forehead. The years that followed were good ones. They watched their grandchildren grow up and begin families of their own. They celebrated births and weddings, mourned losses, and supported each other through the inevitable challenges that came with aging. Damon's joints grew stiff with arthritis, making it harder for him to work with the horses the way he once had. Violet's eyesight began to fail, forcing her to give up the fine needlework she had always enjoyed. But they adapted, finding new ways to contribute and new activities to pursue. They took long walks together in the evenings, moving more slowly than they once had, but still enjoying the beauty of the land they loved. They sat on the porch for hours, talking about everything and nothing, content simply to be in each other's presence. In 1915, as they approached their 33rd wedding anniversary, Violet fell ill. It started as what seemed like a simple cold but developed into pneumonia. Despite the doctor's best efforts, she grew weaker each day. Damon rarely left her bedside, holding her hand and reading to her when she felt strong enough to listen. Their children took turns sitting with them, offering support and help however they could. One evening, when it was just the two of them, Violet squeezed Damon's hand weakly. "I am sorry," she whispered. "For what?" Damon asked, his throat tight with unshed tears. "For leaving you, for breaking my promise to spend another 40 years with you." "You are not leaving me," Damon said fiercely. "You are going to get better, you have to get better." But Violet just smiled, that sad, knowing smile that told him she understood what he did not want to accept. "We had a good life, did we not? The best life," Damon said, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. "The very best. I love you, Damon Young. From that first moment you bandaged my wrists and promised me safety, I have loved you. You were my hero, my husband, my best friend, my everything. Thank you for giving me such a beautiful life." "I love you too," Damon said, his voice breaking. "More than words can say." Violet closed her eyes, still smiling. "Stay with me, always," Damon promised. "I will stay with you always." But by some miracle, whether it was sheer will or divine intervention, Violet did not leave him that night. She began to improve slowly, the fever breaking and her strength gradually returning. The doctor called it remarkable, saying he had been sure she would not make it through the week. Damon knew better. Violet was a fighter. She always had been. She had survived 6 months with outlaws. She had survived the physical and emotional scars they had left. She was not going to let something as mundane as pneumonia take her down. It took months for Violet to fully recover, but eventually she was back to her old self, if a bit more fragile than before. The illness had been a wake-up call for both of them, a reminder that their time together, however long it lasted, was precious. They became even more intentional about spending time together, about saying the things that mattered, about not taking a single moment for granted. They held hands more often. They said "I love you" multiple times a day. They kissed like newlyweds, much to their grandchildren's giggling embarrassment. "We are making up for lost time," Violet would say with a laugh when the children teased them about being too affectionate. "What lost time?" Daniel would ask. "You two have been together for decades. Every moment I am not holding your mother is lost time." Damon would reply, pulling Violet close. I have a lot of moments to make up for. In 1920, they celebrated their 38th wedding anniversary. They were both 65 years old now, officially entering old age by anyone's standards. But they did not feel old, not really. Not when they were together. They had a quiet celebration, just the two of them and their immediate family. After dinner, Damon presented Violet with a gift, a locket with pictures of all four of their children inside. It is beautiful, Violet said, tears in her eyes. Help me put it on. Damon fastened the chain around her neck, his fingers fumbling slightly with the clasp. His hands were not as steady as they once were, but he managed it. There, he said. Now you can keep them close to your heart always. I already do, Violet said, but I will treasure this anyway. That night, as they prepared for bed, Violet stood at the window looking out at the ranch. The moon was bright, illuminating the barn and the pastures where horses grazed peacefully. What are you thinking about? Damon asked, coming to stand beside her. Everything, Violet said. How far we have come, how much we have built together. Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life. Believe it, Damon said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. You earned every bit of happiness you have. We earned it, Violet corrected. Together. They stood there for a long time, looking out at the land that had been the backdrop for their love story. The ranch that had been Damon's childhood home and was now home to 3 generations of Youngs. The place where they had raised their children and built their life. No regrets, Damon asked, echoing the question Violet had asked him years before. Not a single one, Violet replied. You. Only that I have just one lifetime to spend with you, Damon said. I wish I could have 1,000. One is enough, Violet said, turning in his arms to face him. As long as we make every moment count. Then that is what we will do, Damon promised, and they did. For the next several years, they lived each day fully and gratefully. They took joy in the small things, morning coffee on the porch, evening walks, Sunday dinners with the family, quiet nights reading together by the fire. They also took joy in the big things. The birth of great-grandchildren, the success of their children and grandchildren, the continued prosperity of the ranch, the knowledge that they had built something that would last long after they were gone. In 1925, on a warm August evening very much like the one when Violet had first arrived in Santa Rosa, they sat on their porch together. They were both 70 years old now, their bodies showing the wear of 7 decades of living. But their love was as strong as ever, burning bright and steady like a flame that no wind could extinguish. 43 years, Violet said, her hand in Damon's. We have been married for 43 years. Best 43 years of my life, Damon replied. Mine too, Violet said. She leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture that had become second nature over the years. I kept my promise, you know. What promise? Damon asked. To love you for at least another 40 years. I made that promise when I was 30, and here we are. You exceeded the promise, Damon said with a smile. You have loved me for 43 years now, and I will love you for however many more years we have, Violet said. Whether that is 5 or 15 or 50. I will take whatever time we get, Damon said. As long as I am with you, I am happy. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red, Damon pulled Violet closer. They had weathered so much together, danger and fear, joy and sorrow, triumph and loss. Through it all, their love had remained constant, the one thing they could always count on. Thank you, Violet said softly. For what? Damon asked, though he thought he might know. For keeping your promise. For giving me safety not just that first day but every day since. For loving me when I did not think I could be loved. For building this life with me. For everything. Thank you for trusting me, Damon replied. for staying when you could have left, for loving me back, for giving me a family and a purpose and a reason to be grateful every single day. You saved me as much as I saved you. We saved each other, Violet said. That is how it was always meant to be. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Damon and Violet sat together in perfect contentment. They had started as strangers, one broken and one lonely. But together, they had healed each other's wounds and filled each other's empty places. They had built a ranch, raised a family, and created a legacy that would outlast them both. But more than that, they had loved each other with a depth and devotion that was rare and precious. And as they sat together under the stars, their hands intertwined and their hearts beating in sync, they knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Just as they always had, just as they always would. The rope burns on Violet's wrists had long since faded to barely visible scars, pale lines that only someone who knew to look for them would notice. But the promise Damon had made that first day never faded. He kept it every single day for the rest of their lives. Safety, love, home. These were the gifts they had given each other, and these were the things they would carry with them always, from that hot August day in 1882 to whatever lay beyond. Their story, which had begun with violence and fear, had transformed into one of the great love stories of Santa Rosa. And when they were gone, their children and grandchildren would tell the story to the next generation, ensuring that the legacy of Damon and Violet Young lived on forever. But that was still to come. For now, on this beautiful evening in August 1925, they were simply two people in love, sitting together and watching the stars come out, grateful for every moment they had been given and every moment yet to come.